Have you ever looked at an old photo of yourself as a kid and felt something strange? Like, wait, who is that? The expression is too serious, too composed, the eyes staring straight into the camera like that. Child already knew something the world hadn't told them yet. Today, we're going to talk about something that might feel a little too familiar. We're talking about the kids who had to grow up way too fast. And I promise you, you know at least one person like this. Maybe it was the kid at school who stayed quiet, while everyone else was laughing and messing around. Maybe it was the one who always seemed to be watching the adults in the room, reading the mood before anyone else did. Or maybe it was the teenager working a part-time job not for spending money, but because the family needed it. From the outside, these kids seemed mature, responsible, put together. But here's the thing, underneath that good kid surface, there's something a lot more complicated going on. In psychology, there's a concept called precocious maturity. It happens when a child, during the exact years they should be protected and cared for, ends up taking on the emotional weight of the adults around them instead. Psychologist John Bowlby's attachment theory tells us something important here. Attachment theory is basically the idea that children need a secure emotional bond with their caregivers to develop healthily. But when that safety net isn't there, when the adults in their life are unreliable, unpredictable, or just absent, the child adapts. They stop waiting to be protected. They become the protector. And that survival strategy? It doesn't just disappear when they turn 18. It follows them into adulthood, into their friendships, into their relationships, into the way they show up at work and the way they fall apart in private. So let's talk about what that actually looks like. Because chances are, at least one of these is going to hit close to home. The first pattern is the need to control everything. And I don't mean a little bit of planning. I mean the kind of planning where you've already thought through every possible way something could go wrong before you've even started. Think about it. When you grew up in a chaotic home, whether that was financial instability, constant conflict, or just never knowing what mood you'd walk into after school, you learned very quickly that the world was unpredictable. And unpredictable meant unsafe. So your brain found a solution. If I can control everything around me, nothing can blindside me. As an adult, this looks like needing every detail of a trip mapped out before you book it. It looks like reading the menu at a restaurant 3 times. Not because you can't decide, but because you're terrified of making the wrong choice. It looks like lying awake at night, running through scenarios that haven't happened yet. This isn't just being a planner. This is a nervous system that never fully learned how to relax. Because relaxing used to mean something bad was coming. The second pattern is the inability to ask for help. We live in a culture that celebrates independence. But for these people, it goes way beyond that. Asking for help doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels dangerous. Here's why. When you were a kid, the people you were supposed to be able to lean on weren't there. Maybe they were physically absent. Maybe they were emotionally unavailable. Maybe they were dealing with their own chaos. And you learned early on that bringing them your problems only made things worse. So you decided, consciously or not, that the only truly safe person to rely on was yourself. That lesson hardened into a rule. And now, as an adult, you go to doctor's appointments alone. You handle major life events without telling anyone. You say, I'm fine, so automatically you barely even notice yourself doing it. And here's the painful part. That self-reliance that kept you safe as a kid? It's now keeping people out. It's building walls where you actually want connection. The third pattern is crushing guilt and responsibility. People who grew up too fast often have this deeply ingrained belief that when something goes wrong, it's their fault. All of it. This goes back to childhood. When things fell apart at home, kids don't have the capacity to understand complex adult problems. So they fill in the blank with the only explanation that makes sense to them. It must be me. If I had just been better, quieter, more obedient, if I had just gotten better grades, maybe they wouldn't have fought. Maybe everything would have been okay. That belief was never true. But it got wired into the brain during some of the most formative years of your life. So now, when a group project goes sideways at work, you carry the weight of the whole team's failure. When a relationship ends, your first instinct is to ask what you did wrong. Not whether you were compatible in the first place. You hold yourself to a standard no human being could ever meet. And then you punish yourself for falling short. The fourth pattern is struggling to express real emotions. Especially the negative ones. Sadness, anger, frustration, disappointment. For a lot of people who grew up too fast, showing those emotions wasn't safe. Maybe you were told to stop crying. Maybe your anger got you in trouble. Maybe you learned that the best way to keep the peace was to keep the smile. So you became really, really good at performing okay. Reading the room. Mirroring what other people needed. Being the one who held it together. While everything around them was falling apart. But here's what happens when you spend years suppressing what you actually feel. One day, it all comes out at once. In a way that seems completely disproportionate to the moment. Or, maybe worse, it doesn't come out at all. You go numb. You stop being able to access your own emotional experience. And you start wondering if something is wrong with you, when actually, your brain is just doing exactly what it was trained to do. Protect you. At any cost. The fifth pattern is neglecting yourself. And this one might be the most quietly devastating of all. People who grew up too fast are often incredible caretakers of everyone around them. A friend is struggling? They're there. Someone at work needs support? They show up. But when it comes to their own needs, complete blank. Spending money on yourself feels selfish. Taking a day off feels lazy. Resting feels like something you have to earn. Because from a very young age, your worth was tied to what you could do for other people. Needs were something other people had. Yours could wait. Except they never get to. And so these people are among the most at risk for burnout. Not because they're weak, but because they give everything, constantly, to everyone, while running on empty themselves. Now, I want to step back for a second. Because these patterns don't exist in a vacuum. These aren't just personal stories. There's a much bigger picture here. Think about the kids who grew up during the 2008 financial crisis. Or in households where job loss, eviction, or divorce hit without warning. Or in systems where school, sports, and a packed schedule of achievement were treated as more important than a child's emotional development. Many kids were handed adult-sized burdens before they ever had the chance to just be kids. And here's something worth saying out loud. Our culture often rewards this. We call these kids mature for their age. We praise them for being responsible, for not causing trouble, for being the easy one. We don't always stop to ask what they had to give up to become that. So here's why I wanted to talk about all of this today. If anything you've heard in this video felt like it was written about you, I need you to hear this clearly. None of this is your fault. Not a single pattern I described is a character flaw. It is not weakness. It is not something broken inside you. Every single one of these behaviors was a strategy. A smart, creative, necessary strategy your younger self developed to survive an environment that asked way too much of you. You learned to control things because chaos was everywhere. You learned not to ask for help because help wasn't reliable. You learned to carry the blame because it was the only way to make sense of what was happening. You learned to hide your feelings because it kept you safe. You learned to take care of others because that's what you had to do to belong. And because of that, there are people in your life who feel steadied by your presence, who can count on you, who have no idea how much it cost you to become who you are. But here's what I want you to sit with. You don't have to keep earning your right to exist. You don't have to be the most reliable person in every room just to feel like you belong in it. You are allowed to not have it all figured out. You are allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to rest without justifying it. You are allowed to feel things, even the messy, inconvenient, ugly ones. You are allowed to take up space. Today, I want you to try something small. Just once today, talk to yourself. The way you'd talk to that kid in the old photograph. The serious one. The one staring into the camera. Like they're carrying something heavier than they should. Look at that kid and say you did the best you could. And it was enough. Because here's the thing about people who grew up too fast. They are some of the most resilient, perceptive, deeply feeling human beings on this planet. They just never got the chance to hear that they were allowed to slow down. So consider this your permission slip. You've been the adult in the room for long enough. It's okay to just be you now. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment below. Which pattern hit closest to home for you? I read every single one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you soon.